Hey, friend, welcome back to another episode of Ash to Dusk. My name is Ashley Marina, and I am your host. For anyone who is new here, I know that there's quite a few. And for all of you who have been here from the beginning, I just want to say thank you so much. I went and got my taxes done the other day for the business. And so the business tax deadline, I think, is like March 15th. So, had to get my taxes done for the business. And I went to pick those up and then drop off the personal taxes. And when I did that, we were just reviewing a few things with the accountant and we were talking about claiming the boys and just confirming who I get to claim this year because we have three kiddos and my ex-husband and I rotate claiming the kids every other year. One of us gets one kid 1 year, and then the next year we get to claim two. And this past year's for this tax season, I get to claim one kiddo, and I was feeling really resentful in that moment when we were talking, and which I didn't like that feeling because I don't like to feel resentment towards anyone, but I was. And I found myself really frustrated and mad and upset. And then I thought, you know what? I know some of you watching are going through this right now, or you've been through it. And I thought, I've shared my journey a little bit about divorce, but I haven't shared what it's like with co-parenting. And I'm always nervous to share some things because I want to respect my kids and I want to respect their father. No matter what is happening to me or to us, no matter how bad it gets, I always want to respect and honor. And I think there's a fine line. But I also recognize that sometimes I overcompensate for other people who just mess up all the time. Do you ever feel like you do that? You are overcompensating all the time. You make excuses for somebody for why they're not showing up the way that they should. Maybe it's because it's your spouse or it's your mom or a child of yours. And maybe you're in your 60s and we're talking about an adult child. Whoever that is for you, you find yourself making excuses and overcompensating for them because you know deep down that in their heart they're a really good person, but for whatever reason, they can't get out of the chaotic cycle that they've put themselves into, or they keep surrounding themselves with the people that they shouldn't, or just putting themselves in situations that isn't really good for them or for anyone involved. And so I always tiptoe around what I say on this podcast. And I really thought, you know what, I'm not going to do that today. And my kiddos know. They know that what I talk about has a lot to do with personal growth, a lot about being a mom and owning a business. They know that this stuff lives on the internet. And I tell them all the time, boys, don't ever take a picture or a video or a text message, nothing that if somebody put it on the front page of the newspaper or showed me or your dad like that, you wouldn't feel bad about it, like you would be okay with because it lives on the internet forever. And I also think it's important that whenever I share anything, that I do it from a place that I have gone through the other side and I have healed a little bit from it. So I'm never going to talk to you very rarely about something that is happening or has happened in the moment that I feel very upset about or scorned by, or, because we all know what it's like to feel those emotions and then we might say things that we regret. So I want you to know that as I share my journey with you, it's not that I'm not going through things. It's just I think that it's not that I think it is my responsibility to get it right and be able to share my journey and my truth in hopes that it will help you, but from a place of not having any sort of anger tied to it. I think that's important. So, all right, let's kind of dive into this conversation. This is surrounding co-parenting. We've talked at length about burnout, feeling exhausted, showing up when other people are not showing up in the same capacity, feeling like you can't do it all, but you have to keep going. And And so I often feel that when it comes to co parenting. So I am remarried, and my ex husband and I have been divorced for almost 10 years now, which is so crazy to think about. My youngest was 8 months old, so he was little. And when we got our divorce, I remember sitting with the attorney, and he said to me, okay, here's what the parenting schedule typically looks like, child support, here's all the things. And I said to him, I don't want child support because we're going to do this together. We are going to parent these kids together. I know his heart, and he loves these boys more than anything. And in fact, probably a better parent than I am. At least at that time, I really felt that way because I felt like I was always putting myself into work, into things. It's not that I didn't love my kiddos, it was just he was more of the nurturer. And that is just matter of fact. So I actually thought the kids would always want to be with him and never with me. That was my biggest fear going through the divorce. So when I sat there with him, and he was like, so okay, if you want to do 50-50, here's how the schedule would look like. And then we got to the child support, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. What if we just had him pay for the daycare until they didn't need it anymore? And then, like, that's it. And then that way, in the summer when I was off or just different times, like, he wouldn't have to pay for it. That I was trying to help him because I recognized that I ultimately was the one who wanted the divorce, although both of us failed at showing up as great partners for each other, that I was ultimately the one that made the final decision, and I felt bad and guilty. That's just the reality. And so we set it up to where originally there was no child support. He would pay for the child care. And then whenever no child care was needed, he wouldn't have to pay. But it was 50-50. And then I took the health insurance because I had the better health insurance at the time. And I was saying this to my attorney, and he said to me, "You're crazy. You're crazy. Like, you, you know, you don't want to do that. You don't know if somebody else is going to come into the picture and start chirping in his ear." And he changes his tune on things. Like, you don't know if he's going to stop getting the kids. You just don't know what's going to happen. And I was advocating and really truly fighting for my ex-husband at that moment so hard because I'm like, no, I know his heart, and nothing's going to change when it comes to his kids. Like, I know him. That would never happen. And then guess what? A few years later, my worst nightmare happened. And I I remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, this is what happens when you think you always know best and you don't trust the expert or trust, in my case, my attorney who had seen it over and over and over again. He tried to tell me, and I couldn't imagine a world where their dad wouldn't show up and get them, or a world where he might come when he can to get them and then not for a long period of time or bounce around moving, because that was the other thing. Like, I was like, oh, we don't need to be super specific about living arrangements because, we're going to live in the same area. No, he ended up at one point moving an hour and 15 minutes away for a while and even considered going to Cincinnati. So, and it's been a lot of that, a lot of movement. And so I want to talk about that today because the reality is I have shared parenting. I have this agreement where we claim the kids every other year. He ended up taking me back for child support because when his now current wife came into the picture, really talked him into like, hey, you're paying all this for childcare. She's ripping you off, and got into his head. And then they took me to court to actually pay the child support. So pay child support, but not not agreeing to the half of the time. So my kids are lucky enough if they see their dad every other weekend. And there's been many, many times where it's months on end that they don't see him, or he's supposed to get him and then he doesn't show up. And I have made excuses for him even all the way up through recently. And I was saying to somebody, like, maybe it's because he has ADHD and he's just never really got the help as a child and coping skills as an adult to deal with those things. And this person was like, no, Ashley, ADHD doesn't keep you from getting your kids. And it hit me that for the last 10 years, almost for a decade now, I keep showing up and protecting and defending and making all these excuses because I don't really want to face the reality of what the truth is. And that is that I am raising these kids on my own with Mike. And I say that on my own with Mike because it doesn't matter how awesome the step parent is, and Mike is a really good step parent. He it would be a poster step parent for anyone who goes into a relationship who has children. For someone who never had kids, he took them in as their own. He pays for things without ever even questioning, blinking an eye, nothing. Back to school stuff. I mean, he allows their dad to come into our home when he does show up, right? Like when things are good and he does come in, comes into our home, we have birthday parties and we invite their dad to come. He doesn't always show up, but if he does, Mike sits it right next to their dad at the baseball game if he shows up. He really is the poster step parent for how it could be. Unfortunately, most step parents don't show up that way. And if you are a step parent watching, don't hear this the wrong way. I don't know what it's like to be a step parent, and I don't want to speak in a place of not knowing. I know my experiences with step parents, and that is what I can kind of base my perspective on. And whether it be Chad's step parents or whoever, it's just I've in my circle of friends and family, I know my perspective. And so again, I say I'm raising them on my own, but with Mike, because no matter how much support that step parent gives or Mike gives to me and my kids, there's still a void that could never be filled for the boys because that is their dad. You can't replace that, nor do we want to do that, but you can't replace that. And then for me, I find myself as the one who is the keeper of all the schedules and doctor's appointments and I take them to all of those things. I have to worry about their grades. I worry about my son who is autistic and has ADHD and on an IEP. And unless if I tell their dad and then also keep reminding and doing all these things, I don't get that support. And it's not about me, but sometimes you're just exhausted. Sometimes I get exhausted because I am showing up running a business and I have the podcast and I have my kiddos and my family. And I don't think that one needs to cease, like one needs to be taken away to compensate for something else. But I have felt guilty for so many years because I feel like I should be a better mom, that maybe I should give up my dreams and aspirations to go all in on parenting. I get mad at my ex-husband at times and frustrated that I know his potential, I know his heart, and he can't really live in his purpose or be the person that I know he can be because of the influence of those around him. But at the end of the day, I think I also make these excuses because I'm still living in a place of being that 14-year-old girl. I was 14 when I got together with their dad. And so I compensated for him at that age. I would have to, I did, well, I didn't say I have to, I chose to do this, but I would do his schoolwork so that he could pass a class in high school. I would, you know, say, hey, you got to get up, you got to get up. When we got married, he probably would have been late to work every single day. He was late often, but if I wasn't like, come on, you have to get up, you have to get, I've always been taking care of him. And I still find myself doing that now. And he's 40 and I'm about to be 37 and we have kids together. And as I sit here right now, I question myself about if I should release this episode because it is so deeply personal. And I never want to disrespect or dishonor somebody. But in that same respect, there are other people who are going through these things. You are going through this and you feel alone in that. And you're not. There are many of us in these situations. And when we talk about overcoming burnout and overcoming an identity crisis and enabling other people, it starts with having the real conversation. And the reality is you could see my life on social media and think everything is great. I own a business and I travel and I have this podcast and all the things. It is. It's wonderful. And I have an awesome family. But are there absolutely challenges within my family unit? Yes. And co-parenting is one of them. If someone would have told me 10 years ago when we got divorced, like my attorney tried to, but if someone said, yeah, in just a few years, their dad will not get them half of the time. You'll be lucky if he gets them 3 or 4 days a month. You're lucky. Won't help with things. Will not ask questions about how school is going or, hey, do you need this or whatever. If someone would have told me that, well, really, my attorney tried to, but if a family member, if I would have just been like, no way. I said it to my attorney. Like, there's no way that would ever happen. Well, it did the moment he partnered with somebody who could care less about my kids. And when you hear those words come out of someone's mouth, they're not my kids, they're his responsibility. Those words go through your bones in a way that I can't even describe. And it's really, really hard. And it's hard, I'm proud of my boys. I'm proud of them because they show up every day and they don't complain about it. They might question some things or have, whatever, but they really love their dad. And I think that's part of my overcompensating is because I hope and wish one day, sooner than later, that he wakes up and realizes that for their sake and for his, because they're just getting older. I mean, my oldest is going to be graduating in just a few short years. And so I shared this with you today because as I was meeting with my accountant and we were talking about taxes, I was feeling extremely resentful for the fact that last year the boys didn't see their dad barely at all, hardly at all. And yet he's going to get all of those benefits of being able to claim them. And that was hard. That was really hard for me. And I try to overcome the anger that I've had inside of me for so many years. Even as a child, I was a very angry child. Many of you may not know that or realize that. My grandma and I were just talking about that the other day. As a kid, I was full of anger. I was full of resentment. And I didn't know how to deal with it other than it created a lot of anxiety in me. And I would either lash out or I would just speak my mind, but it wasn't always respectful. And so, although I've really overcome that, there are moments where that old version of me shows up and I don't like it. And so I recognize it now and I'm able to quickly apologize if it's needed or sit with it for a minute and recognize like that's not who I am anymore. And I'm going to let that go and we're going to keep moving forward. So, if you're watching this right now and you're in a situation where you thought co parenting was going to be awesome and it's not, I see you and I know what you're going through. And I wish I could tell you that it's going to get better but I can't. And when I pray about it and I'm hopeful that something will change and I try to show up every day with that outlook, it helps me show up as a better mom and as a better ex-wife to my ex-husband. But the reality is I don't know if it's ever going to change. And the best thing that helped me overcome the anger, the exhaustion was when I said to myself, I can't control what he does. And I'm going to stop looking at court documents or saying, well, he's supposed to get them this weekend or these days or this amount of time. And I am now going to say, they're my kids. They should be with me all the time. And that is what I want. And if their dad gets them, that's going to be a bonus for them. It helped me reframe my thinking from I'm exhausted, I'm tired, he needs to help me, it's his weekend, I need a break, to I get the privilege to see my boys every single day. And it was one of my biggest fears, like I said earlier, when we got divorced, was are they going to want to be with their dad more than me? And am I going to see them? And when it was split 50-50, those days when they weren't with me were really, really hard. So now my reframing of it is I get to see my kids every single day. I'm not missing out on anything. If their dad is able to get them or chooses to get them, that is just a bonus for the kids. And for me, I just start now utilizing the fact that they are older so they can be home alone for a short period of time, or I'll ask for help and I'll ask a family member, hey, can they come over? Me and Mike just need a few hours. And I don't set myself up for being disappointed if he doesn't come get the kids on the days that he's supposed to. So if I can encourage you to say, it will never do us any good if we shame the other parent, and especially in front of our kids. It will never do us any good to hold anger and resentment to them. After all, we want to teach our kids how to love and respect and honor really anyone in authority, but especially their parent. Because if they are taught that at a young age, then they will reciprocate that to their children. Oftentimes, we were either not taught to respect our parents, or we were taught to obey parents who were not obedient themselves, whether if they weren't obedient to God or to their parents or to authority. And it's easy to put all the pressure on your kids sometimes to be respectful, but it does start with us as the parent. And so, my number one goal now is to speak truth to my kids. They are at an age now where they can understand what's happening. In fact, oftentimes they know more than I even realize that they know. They can put pieces together. And so, I show up at a place of honesty. I will always be honest to my kids, and I will also teach them to love and respect their father and me and Mike, even when we're not at our best. Because we all know that just because you're a parent doesn't mean you won't fail. Just because you're in a leadership role doesn't mean you won't fail. And the kids need to see that my mom or dad might make a mistake. They might go through a hard time in life. But at the end of the day, if I can show up and love them and respect them and honor them, doesn't mean you don't set boundaries. But if I can do that, I can put my head down at night knowing that I was being the best kiddo that I could be to my parents. I was honoring them. And so we talk about that often, but more than talk about it, I try really hard to put that into action. And yeah, sometimes I fail. Like sometimes I lose my crap because I am human, and sometimes enough is enough and you can only take so much. But I would just say talk to your kids, talk to them, be honest, don't sugarcoat things. When you are honest, you get less questions because they trust you and they know that you are being truthful and that you really are doing the best that you can. And for any step parent who's watching right now, just know that those kiddos, they probably really want to love you, but no one will ever fill the void of a parent. And so, as a step parent, coming from someone who's not, right? So, easier said than done, you chose to be with somebody who has children. That means they come with a whole package. They come with kiddos. And those kids, no matter if they are little kids or they're adults, they're always going to want and need their parents. And as a step parent, it could be a beautiful thing because it could be like, man, I would think if I was a step, like if Mike had children, I would think it would be attractive that he was showing up for his kids. I would think that would be very attractive to me. I would not be attracted by the fact that if he didn't want to get his kids and fulfill those duties and love on them. So, as a step parent, look at it as a blessing, as like you chose to be a part of this person's life and they come with this package. And yes, those kids might be hard, but I have found that I was the most difficult with people who I wanted to love me, but I didn't quite trust them yet. And I almost wanted to push their buttons and see how far I could take it to see, well, do they really love me or not? Or is it all kind of fake? And then when I'm not my best self and I am being mean or I'm just not being my best self, will they still love me? And so, yeah, it's not easy. Divorce is not easy. I have heard it more times than I can count. Well, you chose the divorce. It's your fault. You should have stayed. This is the consequence for divorcing your husband. Your kids don't get to see both parents equally and you know what? Yeah, they don't get to see us equally. And that part is not my fault. My decision to divorce my husband was equally both of our parts. It was both of us not being able to show up and be the best version that we can. And I don't have to explain that to anybody. And until you walk in someone's shoes, you really don't know. I never thought I would be divorced. Never. I said I would never ever do that. But until you find yourself in a situation that then you recognize, oh, wow, it's easier to say one thing until your foot is in that shoe. And then it's a totally different story. So, yeah, I don't know if that resonated with you today. But I think the best thing that we can do as parents who are divorced is to teach our kids to love the other parent no matter what, but with boundaries, especially if they're continuously hurt by the other parent or disappointed. Is that there's a way that you can love, respect, and honor somebody with also setting some really serious boundaries. So, all right, my friend, that was a little bit heavier today, way more personal. But yeah, if you made it this far, tell me in the comments how are you handling it? Do you have a really good co-parenting situation, or do you hope that one day it turns into that, even though you know the reality is it probably won't. Yeah, let me know what you think. And if you stayed this far into the episode, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. It's so important for the algorithm. It helps reach the people who really want to be a part of these conversations and want to grow as a person and want to step towards their purpose in life. So, all right, my friend, until we meet again, keep your light burning from ash to dusk.